The New York Jets hosted Mike Vrabel at the team's facility yesterday. An NFL insider, Connor Hughes, said the interview went, quote, very, very, very well. Could he be the team's next head coach? Rex Ryan will interview for the position as well. On Tuesday, we'll break it down and much more, all coming up here on a Saturday edition of NY Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Hello everybody and welcome in to another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Very special edition here of NY Flight Jets Talk, as we will say farewell to our good friend Alon. Alon means a lot, not only to the Jets community, but myself. He was one of my first listeners ever here on this program when we started it last December, and he was the first actual ever caller here on the program. So we're going to say farewell to him as he takes a job over at the NFL that will prohibit him from calling in to our show. So we'll say farewell. We'll break down everything regarding the Jets head coach search, but everyone smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Don't forget to get in our membership raffle. Every membership you gift gets you a ticket. DB94 is currently leading the way with 15 gifted memberships over the past 3 shows. Prizes will be drawn at the end of the month. We're going to have 3 prizes surrounding the surrounding Jets signed memorabilia. So be sure to get in here. Here are all your tickets. 67 tickets I think we have in so far over the past 3. Like I said, DB94 leading the way. But let's get right into it. We're going to say hello to our good friend Alon, who is joining us here on the program, first ever time as a guest. Alon, how you doing?
What's going on, CL? Let me just get something off my chest.
Of course.
The first time I heard about you or heard from you, there was definitely skepticism, but the diligence you've shown over the last year plus is just unreal.
Thank you.
13 years old, hard work, absorbing everything that goes on with this crappy organization. God bless you, man. Continue the great work, man. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about you going forward.
Alon, I appreciate it. It means a lot, and super happy to have you on here on January 4th, Saturday. And there's been a lot of news surrounding the Jets head coaching search. I guess I'm going to start with the interview that happened yesterday. They hosted former Tennessee Titans head coach Mike Vrabel at the facility yesterday. Obviously, he's the most experienced candidate on this list. 6 seasons as the Titans head coach, 54-48 record, brought them to the AFC Championship game, won 2021 Coach of the Year. I know you've been pretty skeptical as to if he's going to get the job. You think the Patriots job is most appealing for him if that opens up. What are your thoughts on this interview? I think it's a good thing that the Jets got to interview him first ahead of all the other teams. Obviously, his consulting contract with the Browns expired on Monday, allowing him to speak with teams. So it's a good sign that the interview went very well. Initial thoughts here.
Initial thoughts, very excited about bringing him into the building again. If you've been watching the 2024 Jets, the one thing that's been lacking is discipline. And one thing about him is he's a no-nonsense head coach. And I think he'd do a really great job here. Again, I'm definitely somewhat skeptical that he'd take this job. But again, it's a great first visit and a guy who would really change the culture in the organization.
Yeah, for sure. That's what he's known for, bringing energy, turning the culture around. A cultural overhaul is really what this team needs. Someone else who brings a lot of energy is set to interview for the job on Tuesday. Someone, Alon, I know both of us actually despise of for this job, and that's former Jets head coach Rex Ryan. He's set to interview for the job on Tuesday. I mean, Alon, this guy has not had a winning season since 2010. I understand he brought them to back-to-back AFC Championship games, but like we were talking about before the show, what I think happened is he took Eric Mangini's roster, brought some energy, took him to back-to-back AFC Championship games. Then he goes over to Buffalo with what was a stacked roster at the time and can't even bring him to the postseason over 2 years. He's 4 games under 500 as a head coach in his coaching career. I mean, he hasn't been a coach, in 9 years now. I don't even think he deserves an interview, but thoughts here.
The thoughts here, if the Jets want to continue to be a laughing stock, they'd hire Rex Ryan. The idea that they're bringing him in is pretty much, to me, a courtesy interview. I don't think there's anything beyond that. The idea that they'd actually talk to him, I can understand they want to listen to him, but the idea of them bringing him in, all I remember is the last couple of years here with the Jets. He also played a big part in some personnel decisions, as I
He did.
mentioned. Quentin Coples over Chandler
Yep,
Jones is one thing that really
for
bothered
sure.
me. And again, he had his hands right in that. Again, he had said that he had worked out Quentin Coples and thought Quentin Coples was the right guy. Obviously, they picked wrong there. So the idea of bringing him back and him coming here and not wanting personnel decisions is laughable. Again, just give him the interview. He's not getting the job.
For sure. We have a $5 super chat here from our guy 25 who's going to start things off. Let's give him a Jets chat. Jets. There we go. 25 starting at a $5 super chat. That's 2 tickets into our raffle. Love that the football interviews are happening in the football building. Yes, Mike Vrabel was actually at the facility, which I think is a good sign. Because Alan, have you been to the Jets facility in Florham Park?
I have not. No, I've
Okay.
only I've passed by the place in Florham Park. I've not been there. Again, I live down here in Texas, so
Yeah.
I plan on going to a game next year. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, this non-Jet fan wants to go to a Jet game," but definitely I'll go to a game next year. I promised my wife, who has become a Chiefs fan,
Oh,
that
wow.
that they're coming to Dallas next year, so I'd take her to see Mahomes. But I definitely want to go to a game next year at MetLife. Do I think the Jets will be good next year? Not particularly, but the idea of going back and seeing that air conditioner unit definitely intrigues me.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Mike Vrabel was actually at the facility, which I've said you could, bash Woody Johnson, you could bash the Jets for a lot of different things. They didn't cheap out on the facility. I was at the facility twice this summer. It was my first time going to the facility, and it's a beautiful state of the art facility. So good to see Vrabel's meeting there. From what I'm seeing, the Rex interview will be happening at Woody's house in
In Florida.
over in Florida, Palm Beach. So yeah, the Vrabel interview was at the facility, but I mean Rex has coached this team. He knows what the facility looks like and all that. So I'd rather have Vrabel see it than Rex go back for a
Absolutely.
second time and see. But before we get back into it, we have 5 more raffle tickets incoming from Leany, who gives 5 memberships. Jets. There we go. Leany's 5 memberships went to Josie, Cactus Johnny, Chris Grasso, Bino, Mikey Boy, Jets LI. Leany, that's 5 raffle tickets for you. I really appreciate the 5 gifted memberships. So yeah, Alan, I think Rex is a hard no for me right now. Again, basically not learning from your mistakes. You're just setting your franchise back for a few more years. And even if he comes here, what does that window look like? I think it's probably 2 to 4 years he's here coaching this team. So I want to do everything I can to steer clear of Rex. But let's get in the main topic of today's video, as you see in the title. NFL insider Jeremy Fowler revealed an underrated head coach candidate that Jets fans should, quote, keep in mind. And that's someone, Alan and I, we've both been talking about. That's Cliff Kingsbury, Commanders offensive coordinator, 4 years with the Cardinals as their head coach, 28 and 37 record. He brought them to the postseason, 12-5 record in 2021. He's someone, Alan, who interviewed for the head coaching job with the Jets in 2019. He was a front runner for the position. He also played backup quarterback with the Jets. So there's the connection there as well. The connections are all lined up, but you've said you pretty much think Cliff doesn't want to take this job because there's no quarterback really to work with. What would your initial thoughts be if the Jets, well, I think Kingsbury's going to get interviewed, but if the Jets kind of viewed him as a serious candidate here?
I think I'd be interested to hear what he envisions the Jets quarterback situation is going forward.
Yes.
Again, I don't think he's coming here because I don't think he wants to deal with the mess at the quarterback position. I think
No.
he's done such a great job this past year with Jaden Daniels, but he's a guy who's done such great work with young quarterbacks, back to his time back in college at Texas Tech. So I think he's a guy that would be very interested in the Bears job if Ben Johnson decides to stay in Detroit. I think he's a guy who would love to work with Caleb Williams, but again, unless he sees something with some of these young quarterbacks coming out in the 25 draft, or maybe he thinks that he can do something with a Jordan Travis, who I'm still a little skeptical that he's going to come back at 100%.
Yes.
I just don't know why he would take this job, knowing that it's going to be somewhat of a project uh, at quarterback in 2025, knowing that there's a very, very good chance that Aaron Rodgers is going to play his final game on Sunday.
Yeah, now someone I think he would be willing to work with if he took this job is Justin Fields. He's 25 years old, obviously went 4-2 over 6 starts with the Steelers this season. And I say Fields because he has a similar skill set with two quarterbacks Kingsbury's worked with at the NFL level, who he's had success working with, in Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels. Justin Fields, obviously that athletic type. He's able to get out of the pocket, make plays. I think, quite frankly, Allen, he is the most upside out of any Jets quarterback, candidate really for next season. So I could potentially see a world where, hey, the Jets take a flyer on a Carson Beck who's coming off Tommy John surgery in one of the later rounds, and then you have Justin Fields there while Jordan Travis is going to sit as the third string quarterback most likely for his first fully healthy season. I could see a world like that where Kingsbury would take the job. But Allen, overall, when all's said and done, there's all speculation. What do you think this new regime looks like from a head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator standpoint? Do you think, potentially Aaron Glenn? I think Aaron Glenn is going to be the next head coach of this team. Where are you leaning? What direction do you see the Jets going in?
What I'm leaning is the Jets would like to bring in a veteran head coach, a guy
Okay.
who's had experience, whether it's Mike Vrabel or whether it's a Brian Flores. Um, Flores is definitely an intriguing name. He's really done a great job this year with the Viking defense. But I agree with you. I think the guy who ends up with the job is Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn played here for 8 years. I know he also worked I think he worked
Personnel
the
scout.
Jets personnel scout. He also worked in the Saints organization. I know they're
Hmm.
looking for a head coach, but other than the Saints, I think the Jets are considered to me one of the worst jobs out there. So I could see him taking the Jet job over the Saint job. I would hope that somehow, some way, Glenn can come here and take one of his safeties in Detroit with him.
Yep.
But the idea that I think Glenn is going to be right now viewed to me as the number one choice for the organization. I don't know if it's really the sexy pick for Jet fans, but I think he'd bring some fire, and his experience playing in New York would definitely greatly benefit him to take this job.
Yeah, for sure. Glenn, I think it will be Glenn. I think it looks like something. Aaron Glenn is head coach, Ray Agnew GM, Tanner Angstren OC, Kelvin Shepard DC. I think that's exactly what it's going to be look like. Obviously, Aaron Glenn bringing Ray Agnew with him as a GM, who's interestingly connected really to the Jets. As his son is a pro scout, currently in his 8th season with the organization. So I think he's the GM, either him or John Dorsey, and then Tanner Angstren, Detroit's passing game coordinator for OC, and Kelvin Shepard, their linebackers coach for DC. I agree. It's not necessarily the sexy pick, but I don't hate it whatsoever. I put Aaron Glenn in my top 5. You mentioned that fiery personality there. It kind of reminds me a bit of Herm Edwards in terms of the way his personality fits. Obviously, Herm Edwards played defensive back in the league like Aaron Glenn did. Coached in New York, obviously, and has that kind of personality that I think suits Glenn very, very well. Again, it's not the sexy pick, but I would take a guy like Aaron Glenn over a Rex Ryan, over a Joe Brady, one of those options. I'd probably take Todd Monken over him, but ultimately, I think a guy like Aaron Glenn falls to third or fourth on my list because you have Vrabel and Flores who are top 2, and then maybe you could put Monken ahead of him potentially. Now, you said you think it's going to be Aaron Glenn, but you mentioned experience as well. If there was an offensive mind, the Jets want to go with an up and coming offensive coordinator. Todd Monken is not necessarily up and coming, but he's 58 years old with a ton of experience. Lamar Jackson might win another MVP trophy this year under Monken's play calling. Thoughts if the Jets wanted to go ahead and try to bring him in, another one like Kingsbury who interviewed for the job in 2019?
I like the thought of Todd Monken, but again, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, Todd Monken should have been the head coach a few years ago when they
Yes,
hired Adam Gase. So I've always heard whispers that he was somewhat bitter about the idea that
exactly.
Peyton Manning was the reason why he didn't get the job. Peyton Manning called up Woody Johnson and told him to take Adam Gase. So the idea that he's going to come here with really no quarterback set, I just don't think it benefits him. I think he's done such a good job in Baltimore honing Lamar Jackson. I know he won a couple of championships as an OC in Georgia. So the idea of him coming here with really no quarterback in mind uh, doesn't really work well for him to take this job. But I like Todd Monken. I can see him being a head coach next year. I just don't think it's going to be here.
Yeah, and we're pretty much in lockstep in terms of what we think the next regime is going to look like. Now let's really move over to quarterbacks. Let's say it's the Aaron Glenn, Ray Agnew regime that is incoming. Someone on Detroit's roster who really caught my mind the other day, who they could potentially bring in maybe as a bridge option. I wouldn't love it. It wouldn't be a sexy pick, but it could be worth a try. Is Hendon Hooker? He's currently on their roster. I think he was a fourth round pick just a few years ago out of Tennessee. When all's said and done, what do you think the quarterback room looks like next year? I think Tyrod Taylor is going to be here. I want it to be Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor, those two guys really battling it out for the starting job. That's where I stand. Where are you in terms of the quarterback position?
I definitely see Tyrod Taylor as the starting quarterback in 2025. Or if they think that they can bring in a Justin Fields, maybe in for a 1 or 2 year deal, maybe at 10 to 12 million per makes sense. Again, he has experience playing with Garrett Wilson at Ohio State. I could see them taking also a flyer on a day 2 quarterback, maybe a Jackson Dart,
Okay.
maybe a Kyle McCord out of Syracuse, who I think is more of a day 3 guy, but the way he's
Yes.
played this year, he's a guy who could sneak into late day 2. I don't know what I think of Jordan Travis. I don't know if he's fully healthy going into next year, but the idea of them starting a Tyrod Taylor, maybe bringing in another veteran, whether it's Fields or even maybe making a trade for a guy like Sam Howell. I know I got ripped on for my
Mm,
thought about Sam Howell.
I
He's a
like that.
guy who's going to be in his final year of as a rookie. I know he got traded last year from Washington to Seattle, so his 2025 cap hit would be about 1.1 million. So bringing him into the room, but I think that's the 3 guys. I'd say the 2 veterans and maybe a dart throw. Excuse my pun with Jackson Dart, maybe the guy is a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, I'm for taking a flyer on one of these rookies later in the rounds, and I don't want them coming in right away. That's my bottom line. I don't want them to start right away. Something I'm intrigued by is Tyrod Taylor. I guess I know it's against third string defenders last week, but he showed he's elusive, and he showed that in his 11 games with the Giants last year. He was able to put up respectable numbers, and that his numbers last year really fit the role kind of as a bridge quarterback. Something I've been thinking, if you want to go kind of the veteran route here, is you have Tyrod Taylor on the roster, then free agency. There are other options because we know Tyrod's injury prone to kind of compete with Tyrod, and then one of them will obviously back each other up. Some names that are interesting: Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota is another one available. Drew Lock is an interesting name if the Jets kind of want to go that route. So there's that, and then in regards to Jordan Travis, my expectation has always been he's a 5th round pick coming off a gruesome leg injury. I think you have to view everything you get from him as a pure bonus. I don't think we can anticipate anything out of a guy like Travis. We rarely, rarely, rarely ever see anyone come back and make a nice career out of themselves after suffering a brutal injury like that. And as you mentioned, his rehab process, Rich Samini of ESPN reported it's not going as planned. And he's been actually getting so frustrated. He's not even at the facility every day. So he's just been staying home sometimes and not even going to the facility because the rehab process has been delayed. Apparently, he's supposed to be ready for OTAs, but hopefully you get to see something nice out of him in training camp in the preseason. But I think the expectation right now should be we can't expect anything out of a guy like Travis. Everyone smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Appreciate all of your support. Keep the membership super chats coming. Each membership you give, super chat, gets you a ticket into our raffle. We'll get to all your questions, comments, super chats, and memberships. A $20 super chat incoming from Genergy. She gets a Jets chant. Jets. There we go, Genergy. Really appreciate the $20. That is 10 raffle tickets. 10. That's equal to 10 memberships. So you get a free item from our merch store. DM me on Discord. We'll get you the free item. Connor, keep up the amazing work. You have no idea how much you inspire our community. Congrats, Alon, and good luck in your new role. Go Army, beat Navy, Jets. You love the Jets. Genergy, that means a lot. I really appreciate the $20 super chat. That is 10 tickets into our raffle. Really appreciate it. Now we get another $5 super chat from Chris J. We'll give him a Jets chat. Jets. There we go. Can we get the panel's thoughts on Cam Ward? Chris, appreciate the $5 super chat. That is 2 tickets into our raffle. Alon, what are your thoughts on Cam Ward? I think he has an intriguing story, but ultimately I see the Jets picking between 7 and 8. So I don't really know if he'll be there when the Jets are on the clock.
If I would take a quarterback in this draft, it would be him. He definitely has an intriguing story. He started out at Incarnate Word, then he transferred to Washington State and decided his final year to move on to the University of Miami. He's an interesting guy, has athleticism, a guy who can throw the football. I don't think he's really ready at day one. He's a guy to me that would need maybe a half a year of seasoning. But I agree with you. I think he's a guy that's going to eventually be the top quarterback in this draft. I can see him going one or two. If the Patriots pick number one, I could see a team, maybe a Tennessee or even the Giants, moving up to number one and grabbing him. But he's a guy that intrigues me, but he's not a guy that I think if I'm the Jets and I'm sitting at 6, 7, or 8, that I would mortgage my future to move up for. Again, I'm of the belief that I would rather punt on 2025 as far as the quarterback position is concerned, and I'd look at 2026. There is more talent in that 2026 class, whether you're talking about Arch, whether you're talking about Nussmeyer at LSU, or even if you're talking about a Drew Aller out of Penn State.
I'm happy you mentioned Aller there because that's something I want to get into. His stock, especially if he can go on a nice run here in the playoffs. I know he said he's going back to school, but if he continues on this pace and he could potentially win the national championship, I think a guy like Aller has to come out, and I think that's really going to shake up all these big boards here. Because in my opinion, if Aller decides to come out this year, he's the number one quarterback in this year's class. Clear cut for me.
I'll slightly disagree with you there. The one
Okay.
thing I worry about with Aller is his footwork. He's a guy that has size. I'm not going to deny that. His footwork really leaves a lot to be desired. I think he needs to work on that. I think it's a smart decision for him to go back to school. Again, he beat SMU and he beat Boise State in the playoffs. It's not like they beat really two stud
Yeah.
defensive programs. Let me see him beat Notre Dame, and if they beat Notre Dame, let me see him beat either Ohio State or Texas and really perform well. I don't think it really greatly benefits him knowing that they didn't really have a lot of a wide receiver talent at Penn State. I know his biggest weapon is the tight end in Tyler Warren, but again,
Yes.
I watched him the last couple of years, and I'm very worried about his footwork. That's a guy that will struggle in terms of starting right away on the next level. So I think it benefits him greatly to go back to school, hone that skill set, and be a top 10, top 15 pick in the 2026 draft. I know a lot of guys are really intrigued about bringing him here with the Jets and drafting him early in 2025. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he's remotely ready. I think he needs more snaps at the quarterback position, and that would be going back to Penn State and playing his senior year in Happy Valley.
Everyone smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We really appreciate all the support. We're going to go over to the phone line shortly. If you want to call into the show, click the pinned comment in the chat. We'll take some more questions before we go into the phone lines. Before we do that, a 5 spot of channel memberships from our guy, Rick Kent. Now he's tied with DB94, leading the way with 15 memberships over the past 4 shows. Rick, that is 5 raffle tickets for you. I really appreciate the support. This means a lot here on the show. Ever since we announced the raffle, we've been at a NY Flight Jets Talk high in terms of membership, so it means a lot. I appreciate all of your support on the show. One more question here before we go over to the phone lines. John, if you're looking at a free agent quarterback, it should be Carson Wentz, not the other names you mentioned, but the Jets should get Sam Darnold back. Alan, before I go to you, I'll say this. Sam Darnold is not coming back to the Jets, and he's not going to be a free agent, I think, under any circumstance. Even if he can lead the Lions to, not the Lions, excuse me, the Vikings to just one playoff win, potentially. It doesn't even, I think this Lions team, Vikings team is a little underrated here. I think they have the potential to make a Super Bowl push. They're not I understand they have Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones, but they're not the flashy team with all this roster talent. They're a good coach football team with a fine amount of talent that I think is able to make a push to the Super Bowl. So I think under any circumstance, Sam Darnold is not shaking free out of Minnesota. I think worst case scenario for him, he is franchise tagged over there. Alan, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you completely. If I'm Sam Darnold, if I was his agent, I would steer clear of the Jets. I would not
Oh,
come back here.
1000%.
Uh, if I was Sam Darnold and if I ever got free, the team that I would be intrigued by is Tennessee. Not a lot of pressure. They're a top 5 team, and I think he would excel there. But I agree with you. I think he goes back to Minnesota, signs, let's say, a 4 or 5 year deal at about 35 to 45 million per, and call it a day. And then the JJ McCarthy calls will start uh, ringing off the hook in Minnesota.
Yes, absolutely. We got a comment here from Snowballer Guy Jets Worldwide. Make sure you go subscribe to him over there. Great stuff. Alan, any takes on Will Howard from the Ohio State Snowball? You know my opinion on Howard. I'm not a huge fan of him, and I think Alan and I are pretty much in lockstep here, right?
Will Howard's a day three guy. I think what's
Sure.
greatly benefited him is playing with two elite wide receivers and a guy, in my opinion, who is the best overall player in college football in Jeremiah Smith. And he's only a freshman. Again, he'll be a top three pick in the
Oh, for
2027
sure.
draft. I saw Will Howard last year at Kansas State. I give him a lot of credit because he went to the right organization next this year in Columbus. I'm not a huge fan of Will Howard. I think he's a guy that to me is more of a backup in the league. You never know if he finds the right situation. He could be a low end starting quarterback, but I don't see really much in him.
Yeah, I watched two of his games here. I'm pulling up my notes on him. I watched Penn State versus Iowa. I liked his athleticism. He puts the football a lot of turnover worthy plays was some of my something I noticed in watching two of his games. Also, his deep ball's been inconsistent, I'd say at best throughout his whole college run. So fifth round, he's still on the board. Maybe I think he ultimately goes in the fourth round. A fifth or sixth rounder who might be there is Carson Beck, just because he's coming off. I mean, going into this year from like a summer scouting perspective, he was one of, if not the top quarterback in this year's draft. Then he kind of, didn't live up to expectations, and obviously that gruesome UCL tear in his arm that's gonna cause him to get Tommy John surgery. So I'd see Beck going in the fifth or sixth round. He's someone I'd be intrigued by. If Dart or Milrow were there in the second round, I'd be intrigued by one of them. I'd probably take Dart over Milrow just because I think Milrow's more of a developmental project. I think it's going to take a year or two for him really to get acclimated in the league. One more question here before we go over to the phone lines, and it's Rick Kent coming in with his 1 month member super chat. Connor, keep up the great work. I'll miss Alan. Rick Kent, appreciate it. We'll all miss Alan,
Thank
right?
you, Rick. I appreciate it. I'll relay that message to my wife. I wish she can say that sometimes to me too.
Smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Want to call into the show? Click the pin comment in the chat. Let's go over to the phone lines. We got our guy 25 who is joining us
Gentlemen,
here on the show.
how's
What's
it
going on,
going?
25? How are you?
Nothing much. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good,
Doing
thanks.
well.
Good. Just some comments about the QB situation that you guys talked about.
Yep.
If we go the route of getting a free agent quarterback, whether to compete with Tyrod or be the bridge over Tyrod, and we're not talking about Justin Fields, Hendon Hooker should not be in that conversation. If we're going to talk about a guy that went into the league and really hasn't done anything. I don't even think Hendon Hooker's with his original team. I'm pretty sure he's on the Lions right now.
He was
I don't
drafted
remember
by
where
them.
he got drafted.
He was.
To.
He was
drafted
drafted
by the Lions? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
But he hasn't had his opportunity. Similar to Trey Lance. Trey Lance got shafted and bounced over to the Cowboys, and I don't think Trey Lance has had a true opportunity yet. So I would take Trey Lance over Hendon Hooker if I had to go that route. But I really don't think that we're gonna have to get that deep. If we're gonna draft a quarterback, it's got to be Aller if he comes out. I don't care
Yep.
if we have the 9th pick. If you take him with the 9th pick, and that's the end of that. You let him sit for the full year, though. There's no situation in which you should have him play. But if he doesn't declare, then I do like Dart. And I do like McCord. I liked what he did at OSU. I think the lights were a little too bright for him, though. So that's one thing that you can say, because he's done a good job in Syracuse, but it's a smaller school. The lights aren't
Exactly.
as bright. So do you have to take that into consideration as well? Yeah, it's interesting though. I really think it all depends on if we actually have somebody else in the QB room, because the way that I look at it right now is Rodgers is not coming back. You might as well have your funeral for him now. Then Travis I don't think is going to touch the field even in preseason next year.
I
So you
think
have
it
a
will in
one
preseason. He's going to be ready for OTAs.
Okay, so maybe we see some of them, but he's not going to play meaningful games. So you
No.
really only have a one QB room right now. So I think you have to get Justin Fields and just draft somebody, and that's it.
Yeah, my concern right now with Fields, Allen, I want to get your thoughts here, is I think if he asks for a 2 to 3 year deal, I think you have to hang up the phone. But if you can get him on maybe a 1 year deal, I think that's the Jets' best option at quarterback from a statistical standpoint. what he's proven throughout his whole career. From a financial standpoint, Tyrod's clearly the Jets' best option. I mean, $8.5 million guaranteed. He's about to enter his second year of a $12 million deal. So financially, I think Tyrod's the best fit, but statistically, Fields is. Some other names in free agency. This free agency class is pretty deep, actually, from a veteran quarterback perspective. An interesting name here is Jimmy Garoppolo, is someone who just caught my eye. Obviously,
You know,
backup
it's an interesting
quarterback of the
name for
Rams.
me, believe it or not, and I might get clowned for it, but the Pastronaut. He's going to be a UFA after this season.
Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, I'm okay with Josh Dobbs. If you're telling me that we have Tyrod out there and just have Josh Dobbs back there as like a play it safe, just in case type of deal, I'm okay with it. And then you have a drafted quarterback behind him, just sitting.
When you talk about Justin Fields, the real drawing card for him to come to the Jets is his relationship with Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
But I think the only way he would come to the Jets is to see who the Jets hire as their OC. I think it's really important for him to work with a guy who could really enhance his total skill set. And that's the problem. I don't think he's really had that recently. I know he's pretty much like he started really well in Pittsburgh, but he's more of a gimmick quarterback there. He needs to come to an organization that will allow him to fully translate his overall talent into the QB room. I worry about Justin Fields because I just don't think he really has great accuracy with the football.
No.
He definitely needs to work on that. That was the problem with him at Ohio State.
Decision making isn't great either. I mean,
Absolutely.
He'll run when he should have an easy check down for 8 yards. He'll try to pass when he should take the run. I think he's very raw still. But I think that if you get the coaching hire right and you bring in Justin Fields, you don't bring in Justin Fields to appease Garrett Wilson because you don't have Justin Fields be the starter right away. But it definitely helps a hell of a lot if you bring in Justin Fields. You know, Garrett will have his old boy back. It will definitely help for sure.
You want to hear what I think would be? It just came to my top of my head, Alan, because you mentioned maximizing his skill set. A great regime that I think would fit great with Justin Fields is Cliff Kingsbury, head coach, Brian Johnson, offensive coordinator. Kingsbury and Johnson have the connection over in Washington. Brian Johnson's the pass game coordinator and assistant head coach. Look what Jalen Hurts' numbers were under Brian Johnson's play calling last year compared to what they were before that. He took a huge leap under Johnson's play calling. He has the experience working with Jalen Hurts. Again, a similar skill set to Fields. And then, Cliff Kingsbury's a quarterback whisperer. He's worked with basically, every single elite quarterback you could name. So I think you put those two together, I think that's a really solid staff that might kind of want to lure Justin Fields to come here.
The only first-time head coaches that I don't have a problem with right now is Aaron Glenn, and it's probably biased because he was a Jet, and I saw the videos the Lions were putting out of their kind of Hard Knocks-esque thing of Glenn talking, and it just fired me up. It was just like, okay, I could see this guy being the head coach of the Jets.
Oh.
I think 25 pros.
Yeah.
I agree with you on Aaron Glenn in terms of his motivational skills, but as you know, the guy I would love first-time head coach would be Ben Johnson, but I don't think Ben Johnson's a guy that really fits the Jets. I think he's more of a guy that would go and work with a young quarterback, whether it would be Caleb Williams or whether it be down south in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence.
He mentioned the Pastronaut there, Alan. Josh Dobbs threw a touchdown in garbage time on Monday night against the Lions. Dobbs is an interesting one. He had experience with the I know he's the Steelers backup just a few years ago. He's with the 49ers right now. A third string option? I mean, why not?
He's a $3 million guy on day 4. Day 4 of free agency. He's not a guy I really would think long and hard of. I think a lot of Jet fans were very frustrated that last year the Jets decided to keep Zach Wilson and not go the veteran route, and they allowed the Vikings to trade a 6th-round pick to go get Josh Dobbs. They thought the Jets would be the team to go get him. So I think that's the only idea of bringing Josh Dobbs here. I just don't think much of him. I don't think he's really much of a needle mover for the Jets.
Now, Cooper Rush is another interesting name. He's basically been the Cowboys quarterback all season long. I think he's on an AAV of $2.5 million. If you brought him in, it would probably be something like 1 for $4 million. I think could be a fair assessment potentially for him. Jets do that. Who would you rather prefer, honestly, starting next year? Because we've been talking about the free agent options, but we really haven't honed in on Tyrod. My plan right now is potentially bringing a Andy Dalton, maybe even a Pastronaut, Mason Rudolph, one of these guys to come in and battle with Tyrod Taylor for the job if you can't get Justin Fields. I think ultimately Tyrod Taylor would beat one of those guys out for the starting job. And as we know, Tyrod can't stay healthy. So you have one of those guys waiting behind Tyrod for once he goes down, and they could probably kind of play 2 to 4 games per year. Thoughts on that plan?
Out of the options you've mentioned, I think Fields is the most intriguing because he brings so much athleticism. Again, his
Upside.
familiarity with Garrett Wilson's a big thing for me. And again, if you're an OC, he's a guy that you'd like to work with in the back just to see how you can bring out his full potential. Again, I worry about his accuracy. Again, his decision making with the Bears really left a lot to be desired. But he's a guy that would be an intriguing dart throw for the Jets. And he'd be a guy that would work well working under Tyrod Taylor. So he's a guy that, out of all the options, he's a guy I'd bring in. I don't think it would really break the bank for them to bring him in, maybe a 1 year, let's say $8 to $15 million deal.
Yep.
I think that makes the most sense for the Jets currently.
We'll take one more question here before we wrap up, and it's from Teresa Ice. Do you think Greg Zuerlein will be the Jets kicker next year and Garrett Wilson will be back next season? Teresa, I'll handle the first one. Greg Zuerlein is not going to be the Jets kicker next season.
No, I don't think he is. I think the Jets will they'll take the dead cap hit on that one. I think it's going to cost them maybe $2.5 million on the dead
Yep.
cap hit for there. So, yeah, I don't think Greg Zuerlein. I think they'll. It's funny because if you look around the league and you look at guys like Jake Bates in Detroit and Brandon
Yeah.
Aubrey in Dallas, those were no names, and now they're considered top 7 kickers in the league. So maybe the Jets can find someone out of the blue and he could be their kicker long term.
An interesting name in the draft, 7th-round flyer, undrafted free agent Ryan Fitzgerald out of FSU. He's been pretty much automatic field goals. You want to go that route with a younger guy. And here's the list of free agents. I actually like every single one of them except actually one of them I dislike. But Nick Folk, Matt Prater, Eddie Pinheiro. So Folk and Pinheiro obviously have the history with the Jets. Michael Bagely, I'm not a fan of his. He's been pretty much inconsistent at best throughout his career, last serving as the Detroit Lions kicker. And the last one's Joey Sly. I mean, Joey Sly is with the Patriots right now. He's a strong leg. He's been accurate, you could say, throughout his whole career, and he's a strong leg. He's able to kick 60 or so yards. And I mean, Greg Joseph's kicking this weekend for the Jets. He's a proven guy. Let's say he hits a 50 or so yarder this weekend. Maybe the Jets have seen enough out of him to potentially bring him back on a cheap 1-year deal next season to kick for the Jets. I think there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. You mentioned Garrett Wilson there, Teresa. I think if Aaron Rodgers is back next season, he wants out. But if not, if it's Fields, I think anyone but Rodgers, actually, I think he'll want to play with next season. I just think Rodgers has done so much damage to him, so to speak.
Garrett Wilson's an interesting one. I know I brought it up on other shows that if I was him, I'd want out.
Same here.
Again, he looks around the league and he looks at guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he looks at a guy like T. Higgins, some guys in his wheelhouse, and he's thinking, you know what? I want to play with a stud quarterback. Does he really want to come back in year 4 playing with a new quarterback? If I was him, I'd want out. I'm curious what the deal the Jets would offer him to keep him. Maybe 5 years at 30 to 32 million a year. I think it's a little over ask in my opinion, but if I was him, I'd ask for the bank. I'd ask for the farm if I was from the Jets. But again, I think there will be teams knocking down the Jets' door to see if Garrett Wilson's available. Maybe the Chargers, maybe the Broncos, maybe even the Texans. But again, if I'm Garrett Wilson, I'm thinking all options. But I know one thing I know about Garrett Wilson, I think he's very frustrated at what's been going on with his organization. 3 years, team continues to lose. I think he's a guy who would actually take less money to play with an organization if he could win. And I just don't think that's going to happen with the Jets in 2025.
The problem with Garrett Wilson right now is the Jets basically have all the leverage in this situation from where it stands in a contractual standpoint, because they're going to pick up his 5th-year option after the season. I think they'll pick up the 5th-year option on all 4 of the guys from the rookie class. So the Jets have all the leverage. I mean, I think you have to do everything you can to re-sign him. If he asks for 120, which Amon-Ra St. Brown did, I'm shaking his hand. But again, I think you're right. I think he might ask for more money to go out and play for a winning team. Maybe the Texans, who are in need of a kind of more stable wide receiver room, if he wants to go out and play there. But again, the problem is Tank Dell comes back fully healthy. He's third in the pecking order there behind Nico and Tank Dell. So, I think if he wants to hit 1,000 yards every year, stay with the Jets. I think that's his best option. If he wants to hit 1,000 yards every season, because the Jets clearly have no weapons behind him right now. Brees Hall down year, like none of it's tough right now where they stand from a pass catching standpoint. I think Tyler Conklin comes back in free agency, 1 year $4 million, 1 year $5, something like that. Chris comes in and says Brees doesn't have a 5th-year option. Yeah, Brees is the only one that doesn't have a 5th-year option. I think he'll play out next year. He'll play on a tag when all those guys are playing on their 5th-year options, and then he walks it after that season. Thoughts there?
Totally agree. I think Brees Hall is not here for the long run. He will be here for the next 2 years, but again, there's such a short shelf life on running backs. And if I'm Brees Hall, I'm seeing what's going on around the league. I'm looking at what's going on in Detroit, and I don't think he's been fully maximized here with the Jets. If I was him, I'd want to work with a better offensive staff. So I'm very frustrated at the way he's been utilized here. So I would not be surprised if Brees Hall becomes an ex-Jet in the next year or two.
One more question here before we wrap up. Our guy John coming in. Jets should do whatever it takes to get Darnold back. Throw him in the bag. Bring his boy McCown to be OC. Hire Flores. Steal as many Vikings coaches and personnel people as possible. Here's the thing, Alan. I think doing everything you can might be a little bit much. This is 1 year. I root for Sam Darnold. I hope he has the resurgence that Baker Mayfield has had. I hope that happens, but. I don't think he's still proven enough to go out and make a ton of money. I think the Vikings might want to just go ahead and tag him and say, show us you could do that again for one more season, and hope he just doesn't return to his prior form, which he showed during his time with the Jets and 49ers. McCown as OC, though, and Flores as head coach, sign me up. Those are both two of my top candidates for both their respectable positions there.
Think from a player's perspective. If I'm Sam Darnold, I have no interest whatsoever to come back to the Jets.
Nope.
Now he's working with a legit top-notch offensive mind in Kevin O'Connell. The idea of continuing to work with him is something that would be intriguing. And I think if I was him, knowing that this might be his best opportunity of getting a long-term deal, he will try the most to do that with Minnesota. Does Minnesota try to tag him? They might. But I think that's really skating the line in terms of keeping him happy. I think he wants that multi-year deal. He would want that 3 to 4 year deal to stay in Minnesota. But as far as Darnold coming back to the Jets, I know John had mentioned Josh McCown coming in with him.
Yep.
Again, Darnold has absolutely no interest in coming back to the organization. And if I was him, I would totally not want to come back as well.
No, why? Why? Name me one reason why Sam Darnold, even if you pay him the most money, again, I think this might be the scenario where he potentially would take more money. He would take less money with Minnesota to go ahead and stay there than the Jets throwing him the bag and wanting him to come back here. Why? That just brings back awful memories for him. Mono and all of that, which happened during his Jets tenure out. I'm seeing ghosts, all of that. He would get tormented for all of that stuff. He's in a great situation right now, I think, in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
And Minnesota is just in a great position overall from an offensive standpoint. You have Sam Darnold, who could potentially lead your team to a Super Bowl trophy, and then you have a first-round pick just sitting behind him. I understand he's coming off 2 leg surgeries, but still, no other team in the league really has that luxury type at the quarterback position.
Totally agree with you. Again, Sam Darnold wants to work with a great offensive mind. He fell into this spot signing a 1 year, I believe a $10 million deal
Yes.
with Minnesota. That was a flyer. Again, the second torn meniscus for JJ McCarthy allowed Sam Darnold the opportunity to excel this year, and he surely has. I mean, they're 14-2, and tomorrow night they're playing for the division title and a 1 seed. So if I'm him, I want to stay as close to Kevin O'Connell as I can.
And now, Alan, a piece of good news for the Jets regarding tomorrow's game against the Vikings and the Lions is no matter who wins, the Jets will have an opportunity in 2 weeks to either 1 week actually to either interview Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores, because one of the teams will be on the bye, so they'll be able to speak
Absolutely.
with one of those guys, which is a positive because both those guys are front runners. Everyone smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Final chance to get your questions, comments, thoughts in super chats. Last chance to get in our membership raffle for today's show. Alan, it means a lot. I appreciate appreciate you joining me. Like I said, you were one of my first listeners ever on the show. It means a lot that you were able to hop on. And for, the next, what did you say, 8 months, we're going to have to say
Eight
farewell?
months, 8 months. You don't get to see my mug, so I don't know if that's really uh, a detriment to people. Again, I have the perfect face for radio, so God bless me. But again, Connor, I'm really impressed at what
I
you've done
appreciate
over
it.
the last year. Okay, so continue to drive strong, and again, tell your father again next time, root for a better team, especially the
Yes.
one on your hat. That's not even a good team either. So
Yeah,
God
nope.
bless you.
Nope, not any good teams coming. Alan, really appreciate it. Final question I asked to every one of my guests here, 4 dinner guests, anyone in the world, dead or alive, who are you taking?
Dead or alive?
Could be family, it could be anyone.
Okay. Um, Again, my favorite baseball player growing up was Paul O'Neill. I've actually met him a couple of times.
Okay.
Again, I used to work for the AP, so he's a guy I'd like to
Yep.
learn a little bit more about. Um, this is going to be controversial. It's a guy who grew up in the same neighborhood as I did, and that's
Ooh.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a
Okay.
Jamaica Estates guy, so am I. Um,
Wow.
Clark Gillies, again, I'm a huge Islander fan. Rest in peace. He's a guy that I would have loved to learn more about. And I'm a big metalhead, so I've always been a big Steve Vai guy.
Okay.
So that's another person I'd like to meet. So those are four completely different ends of the spectrum, but those are the four guys I'd love to meet. As you said, there's no family here, so I'd like to meet four guys
Yeah.
that would be completely out of the blue.
Alan, like I said, really appreciate you joining me. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Alan, best of luck in your new role, and we hope to see you soon. For Alan, I am your host, Connor Long, signing off. JETS, 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 Jets.